We're in a woodland on the edge of Lyme Regis, and it's early April. The leaves haven't burst out on the trees yet, so we've got this wonderful flora of violets and celandines and bluebells coming out. But we're going to focus on violets today because they have quite an important role to play in the life cycle of a couple of our scarce butterflies in East Devon. And I'm really delighted to have with me Paul, who knows a little bit more about butterflies than me. So, Paul Butter, thanks for joining me in this wonderful woodland.
Yeah.
What is the role these violets play?
Well, there's actually 5 species of fritillary that all feed on violets in the caterpillar stage. So that's their chief role, is the food plant. And in East Devon, we do have still the Pearl Bordered Fritillary and the small Pearl Bordered Fritillary. Sadly, the Pearl Bordered Fritillary has much declined over the last sort of 30 years. And the main reason for that is the reduction in coppicing. It used to be said that a lot of these fritillaries followed the woodman, so they went from coppice to coppice, and the ideal situation is when the violets are springing up after the canopy has been removed, and there's sort of 2 or 3 years after the coppicing's been done that is absolutely favourable for the butterflies.
So does a butterfly lay the eggs on the violet or nearby? What time of year does it start to use the violet?
Well, the Pearl Bordered Fritillary does actually lay its eggs on the violet leaves, and it's on the wing. It used to be called the April Fritillary, but I think with this cold April this year, it will be probably out in May. Once the egg's laid on the leaf in May, it'll hatch out in a couple of weeks, and the caterpillar will feed on the tenderest of the leaves. It really prefers the sort of more recent, juicy, fresh leaves, not the old ones. And it'll feed on those right through to September. It changes its skin 4 times during that period, gradually getting bigger. And when the temperatures start to drop, they then find a dry, curled leaf, and they just overwinter as a caterpillar. And then they resume feeding on the fresh young growth of violet in the spring, in the early spring. And they can often be found in a good population. You can often find the caterpillars basking on a dead leaf or on dead bracken, although they're very well camouflaged, where they can warm up. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to have some dead leaf litter or dead bracken, because the temperature on those leaves, on those dead leaves, is substantially higher than it would be on just grassland, on ordinary vegetation. And the pearl border in particular really needs that basking period to fully develop.
Am I right in thinking the small pearl bordered is a little bit more common than the pearl bordered?
Yes, it's not quite so fussy. The small pearl bordered actually does lay some of its eggs on the violet leaves, but the females will hover around a patch of violets, and then it will just spray eggs out of its abdomen, and some of them will land on a leaf, and some will just fall into the litter around the violets, and then the caterpillars will have to find their own way, which is quite extraordinary when you think about it. It has to be in an area where there are a lot of violets, because obviously a tiny little caterpillar can't afford to wander about for too long before it finds something to eat.
Yes. So we're looking at dog violets, the common dog violet, but there are marsh violets and also heath violets. So would that have something to do with having more small pearl borders around? Because they might go and lay their eggs on marsh violets. So I think the pearl border focuses particularly on the common dog violet.
Yes. The small pearl border will tolerate much damper conditions, which you do get in the marsh violet. So it covers a wider range of habitats than the pearl border does. As I said, the pearl border is quite fussy. But having said that, there's been a lot of conservation work on woodland rides where there were pearl borders. I mean, I can remember as a lad, woods in Dorset to be full of pearl border fritillaries, and now sadly they've completely gone. So I think there's a larger things at work, and I think climate change is probably one of the main drivers of it moving northwards and westwards.
Yes.
We can't tell from butterflies because there aren't very many butterfly species in Britain. There's only about 50 or 60, whereas in
Mm.
moths there's plenty to go at.
Yeah,
And
hundreds. Mm.
survey of the results of the moths that have declined seems to indicate that a lot more species that overwinter as larvae are declining rather than those that overwinter as eggs, pupae or adults. And one theory is that in these milder, wetter winters, the larvae are more susceptible to fungi.
So what we want to do in East Devon AOMB as part of the Saving Special Species project is encourage people to go out and explore their local woodland and hedge banks and even heathland, and see if they can spot these violets and record them and let us know. So on the website there is a survey form that people can download. And at the same time, because we know that the pearl bordered will hopefully be flying on the wing in late April or early May, to keep an eye out for those butterflies too. We want to see if they're still around. And again, it's down to the management of the landscape they're in that we need to try and improve. So, Paul, thank you.
Okay.